As you all know, the month of February is Black History Month, so your college has decided to partake in the honoring of many heroes and pioneers of the Civil Rights Movement. This week, a few of the professors who are passionate about history and the growth of our nation will be speaking on different civil rights topics. We will start the week off with a couple of reenactments being narrated by Mrs. Lones.
First, I'll start by telling you that I am very appreciative, first off, to the chapel committee and the students that are helping us put this together. This has been kind of a labor of love that several of us have been involved in hopefully bringing you guys a little bit more information about some events that maybe you know something about or maybe you don't, but hopefully to give you a little bit of insight about what people, some of them your age, went through to have the rights that you have right now. It's important that we not forget, and so hopefully today we can give you a little bit of insight into that. Let me also tell you that some of the things that are going to be said today may seem a little off color, and that's because they are historically accurate. Spent a lot of time reading biographies and interviews to get the exact language that these people used. And the lines that are said are either directly from their lips in a later interview where they recounted what happened, or those people around them. So please be aware of that. Don't get all concerned about somebody saying something a certain way. I can assure you that we are trying to be as careful and respectful of the material as possible. We'll start out by talking about the Greensboro lunch counter sit-in. Despite some hard-fought gains in the fight for racial equality, segregation remained firmly entrenched in 1960 America. Black citizens in the South were still treated as second-class citizens, and their calls for justice remained largely unheard. There have been some advancements in the rights in this whole movement. For instance, you guys have heard of some of these. The Brown versus Board of Education decision in 1954, and the Montgomery bus boycott in 1955 and 56. And then also you guys have heard of the desegregation of the Little Rock, Arkansas High School in 1957. It's important that you guys put this in context because even though these great gains were made, the movement kind of stagnated for a few years. That all changed in 1960. On that afternoon of February 1st, 1960, 4 teenagers from the Agricultural and Technical College of North Carolina walked into the lunch counter at F.W. Woolworth in Greensboro, North Carolina. Their names were Joseph McNeil, Franklin McCain, David Richmond, and Ezell Blair. They purchased several small items such as toothpaste, gum, toothbrushes. While it was a diner, they did sell these kind of random things. They made purchases and were very deliberate in purchasing and retaining their receipt. This was to prove that they were able to make purchases. After they made these purchases, they sat down at a whites-only counter. Geneva Tisdale, a black kitchen worker, told them, as she chided them, it didn't deter them. They continued to ask for coffee and pie, anything they could. A white waitress refused to serve them by saying,
"I'm sorry, we do not serve Negroes."
McCain replied,
"I beg your pardon? You just served me at a counter 2 feet away. Why did you serve me there but can't serve me here? Why can't I be served at all the counter?"
Just a few years ago, McCain was interviewed, and he recalled a more positive reaction on that day. You see, this was a group of 18-year-olds who were doing something incredibly courageous, but there was kind of a bright, shining moment. There was an elderly woman just a few seats down from them who approached them and placed her hand on McCain's shoulder and said,
"Boys, I am so proud of you. I only regret you didn't do this 10 years ago."
Now, obviously, this was a bit out of character. They had watched her for some time as she seemed to be perplexed by their attendance or their placement at the counter. So when she walked up with such positive words, later on McCain recounted that it was like a sign from heaven. They knew they were doing the right thing. The four men had come in prepared to be arrested, but they were allowed to remain seated until closing time. McClain told later in a reporter that they never planned on an economic boycott. This was just to make a point. He told the reporter, "We want to spend our money, and we want to spend it at the white and the black counter." Harris, who was the store owner, had gone to the police station to file a report. The police chief basically told him, "They're not causing any trouble. I'm not going to intervene." So when Harris returned, he did the only thing he knew to do and decided to close the store early. As they left, the four boys told Harris, "We'll be back." And they were. The next day, they returned with 29. And the next day, even more. By the end of the week, they had 1,400 people with them, obviously overwhelming the diner and the street out in front of it. Their role was important. These student-led sit-ins, it didn't just happen in North Carolina. It happened all across the South. It spurred a new group of leaders, student leaders, who wanted to be involved, who wanted to make a difference in the civil rights movement. They formed organizations such as SNCC. Maybe you've heard of that. SNCC is the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. Dr. King praised them in one of his writings where he said that they started an electrifying movement that shattered the plastic surfaces of campuses across the South. These sit-in protests were successful in integrating lunch counters, including Woolworths. After a week of protesting, they backed off and gave the time to the store owner to make some decisions. And within a few months, the counter was integrated. Their role, however small we may think it was incredible. 18-year-old boys came forward to make a difference. These sit-in protests were more than just Woolworths. Within just a few years, segregation at all lunch counters was made illegal with the Civil Rights Act of 1964. It's only a few years earlier, 500 miles away, in Montgomery, Alabama, that we see another story of courage and betterment towards a society that was the way it should have been. After working all day, Rosa Parks boarded the Cleveland Avenue bus around 6 p.m. on Thursday, December 5th, 1955, in downtown Montgomery. She paid her fare and sat in an empty seat in the middle of the bus in a section that was reserved for black passengers. The catch here, though, folks, is this middle section that Rosa is sitting in is for black passengers as long as there were enough room for white passengers. Initially, Rosa didn't happen to notice who the bus driver was. You see, they had a history. Just 12 years before, they had a run-in. This guy's named James F. Blake. He had kicked her off the bus at some point after she paid her fare and made her get off the bus and stand in the rain. So Parks was always careful around him. 3 stops later, the bus stops at the Empire Theater. At this point, the bus driver looks around and notices that the bus is starting to get full. He approached Parks and demanded that she and 3 other black people give up their seats in the middle section so that the white passenger could sit down. Years later, Parks said that when the white driver stepped back towards us and waved her hand towards me, I felt determination cover my body like a warm quilt in winter. Blake said,
"Y'all better make light on yourselves and move to the back. You gonna stand up?
No, I'm not.
You don't stand up, I'm gonna call the police and have you arrested."
You may do that, but I don't think I should have to stand up.
when Parks refused to give up her seat, a police officer arrived to arrest her. As he arrested her, he stood her up, cuffed her behind her back. Mrs. Parks asked him,
"Why did you push us around?"
I don't know, but the law's the law, and you're under arrest.
Parks was charged with a violation of Chapter 6, Section 11, segregation law of the Montgomery City Code. In her autobiography, she later recounted the frustration she felt in hearing her story retold by others. She said, people always say that I didn't give up my seat because I was tired. That wasn't true. I was not tired physically, not any more so than any other day. She said, people also paint me as old. Although some people see me now and think that's how old I was. I was 42 years old. It wasn't about my age or being tired. No, the only tired I was tired of giving up. During a radio interview several months after her arrest, Parks said she decided, I had to know for once and for all what rights I had as a human being and as a citizen. In response to her arrest, black men and women in Montgomery boycotted the city buses and they demanded an end to segregation. Because of the protesters' refusal to ride the bus system nearly went out of business. Parks' refusal to move showed how one person could make a huge society-altering impact. Her use of nonviolence inspired others, not the least of which was Dr. Martin Luther King. The subsequent Montgomery bus boycott lasted 381 days. People risked their lives. They walked in snow. Probably not a lot, it was Montgomery. Rain, blistering heat. It didn't matter. They unified. One of my favorite stories is of Dr. King. He had basically been talked into leading this boycott, but he goes to his window in his house the morning following the decision to boycott. You see, Dr. King wasn't all that sure this would really work. But he goes to his window, standing with his cup of coffee, and he nearly drops it for shock because a bus drives by. As the bus is illuminated by those indoor lights, you guys know what I'm talking about, those little lights inside the bus, he could see that it was nearly empty. He was shocked. It worked. And folks, it worked for 381 days. Those efforts, that one movement by Mrs. Parks to refuse to ride the bus from that day forward made a change. And in November of 1956, the U.S. Supreme Court outlawed segregation on buses. And after the court order hit Montgomery, the African Americans in Montgomery began to ride the bus again, wherever they pleased. These are just two small examples. These are stories you've heard before, I'm sure. But it's important that we illustrate to you that, number one, young people just like you made a difference. And they did it so that you could sit in an audience just like this. And then there are these courageous women, these heroes such as Rosa Parks, who again, she just was ready for change. She did not see how it was right for her to have to move just for a white man. She stood her ground. The courage these people showed is incredible. I appreciate the opportunity to share these stories with you. The rest of the week is going to be full of wonderful stories that will hopefully inspire you to appreciate the history and appreciate the people that went through things, some of them unspeakable, to give you the freedoms that you have today. Again, I thank you. Hope you have a great week.